I have found what is to be what I can call successful for my business, as far as being able to sell things and also being able to sell the idea of things, which is very important for game designers. Being able to sell the idea of it is much more important than selling the physical product itself. Interesting tidbit, I sell fewer games at gaming conventions than I do at things like pop culture conventions. At a pop culture convention, I'll sell 10, 15 copies of my game. Go to a gaming convention, I'll sell like 3. So, but the people who go to the gaming con will demo it, and if they do buy it, they show it to all their friends, and then sometimes we get some online orders. So for gaming conventions, I haven't been to one yet that is as successful as a pop culture convention. However, all are relevant and all have slightly different strategies as to what it is that you want to do and what your goal is for attending a convention. Little brief overview of what I'll be talking about tonight. Finding the right convention for you. Pre-marketing, booth display and presentation, sellables, demos, and emails. Emails, very important. Scheduled events versus doing things ad hoc, and making connections. So, finding the right convention. Sometimes we're limited in conventions we can go to because of travel costs. If you're lucky enough to live in St. Louis or Kansas City, you have conventions there that just happen on the regular, and you don't have to leave your home and try to work out the whole hotel situation. However, there are several cities that are within a very, very short drive of where we are right now. Not just St. Louis and Kansas City, but Omaha, Nebraska is not very far. It's about 3.5 to 4 hours away. Des Moines and the Quad Cities up in Iowa are only about 4 hours to 4.5 hours drive apiece. Springfield, south of us, is about 3 hours away. And then if you go over up to, I think Chicago is 6 hours-ish, a little bit more. There's not much going on in Chicago for gaming conventions, but there's other conventions there. And then of course there's some like over in Kentucky, Tennessee area. I haven't really explored those as much because Missouri keeps me quite busy. Here in Missouri alone, there are at least 4 tabletop conventions that are worth going to, and I know of at least 2 video game oriented conventions. So, tabletop video games or both. As far as Missouri is concerned, 3 of the events are solely tabletop. 4 of them. There's Midwest Game Fest. CantCon is technically in Kansas. Those are tabletop. Geekway to the west in St. Louis is tabletop. Game Expo down in Springfield is tabletop. Though they try to say that they have video games, but I've never seen one there. They are the Gaming Arts and Media Expo, which I thought sounded really cool, and then I went there and it was just a bunch of board gamers, which I'm fine with because I just do tabletop designs. And then there's one called Mo Game Con that's out near the St. Louis area, and they are touting themselves as a retro video game convention. Haven't been to that one yet, but I was looking into it. Should you go to one that's more focused in your area versus something that is, kind of all-inclusive? That's up to you. Like I said, if I go to a tabletop convention, I don't sell very many games. It's really hard to sell a tabletop game to a hardcore tabletop gamer. They want to see it, they want to demo it, but it's a lot harder to sell it to them and get them to get money out of your pocket. I have much easier time selling them bracelets and key fobs and other things that I make out of leather than I do games. But if I go to a convention that's all-inclusive, like a pop culture convention, I will sell games plus everything else. Cost can also be a factor in if you're going to an all-inclusive convention versus a sort of focused convention. Geekway, just to run the gamut here, Geekway to the west is a $500 10x10 booth, whereas CantCon is like $100 for an 8-foot table. So I can get 4 times the space at the smaller Kansas convention for what I get in St. Louis, and I make about the same amount of money. So if it's not about the money, then it's got to be about something else, and I'm getting ahead of myself. Resources that you can look at, tabletop.events. If you are a tabletop designer, that website is your friend because it will tell you every tabletop event that someone has registered on that site. All of the major tabletop conventions use the site because one, it's free, and two, it helps them organize their events and make schedules and things, and makes registration much easier for vendors and for attendees. I have not found one that is similar to that for video games, unfortunately. I tried to find one, and there just really isn't one unless you count game jams.
There was one about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, something like that. The guy that was running it said on the site, "We can't keep doing this for whatever reason," and shut down. That was the only one that I ever knew of.
Yeah.
And it had 75% of them.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to find video game centric ones. But if you know of them, then they're a lot easier to get to. Like PAX. PAX is great for tabletop and video games. They have 3 different conventions over the year that are across the US. The one in Texas is the one that's closest to us. And then there's PAX Unplugged in Philadelphia, I think. It's on the East Coast. Then there's PAX Unplugged on the East Coast that is tabletop specific. Their conventions are going to be a little more expensive, but they are very focused and they draw a huge crowd. So you're talking about extreme exposure, which is the answer to the point I was making earlier, is if it's not about the money, it's about exposure, getting your game out there. Exposure doesn't put food in our bellies, but it does get your name out there and make you legitimate. Pixel Pop Festivals in St. Louis, it is not only incredibly affordable, but if you want to be if you want to do anything within our Missouri community as a game designer, you should be going to Pixel Pop. If not to present, at least to attend and hear from other designers. Mo Game Con, I told you guys about before. And then, of course, our little homegrown Como Game Expo that is on its way up and hopefully will become something that will be unique for tabletop and video game designers.
I'll just add, and I don't know if you have already, but the Pixel Pop submission deadline is middle of next month.
Yeah, so if you want to go, you gotta get on it like now. I think it was about $50 for a table. If you want like a full-size booth, then it's like $100. In most cases, you're not going to need a full-size booth unless you have a lot of stuff to either sell or present. Pre-marketing. So you've chosen your convention, you know where you're going, you've gotten registered, and you know where you're going to be and when. So you should be telling everyone. Make sure your audience knows that you're going to be there. If you don't have an audience, then you need to be building one of those. And if you don't have an audience specific to your product, there is somewhere that you can share it that people will start to sort of pick up on that. And if you use the proper social hashtags for the event or post in the right places for the event, you might gather the attention of some attendees that are planning on going and see your post. So if you don't have an email list, obviously you can't send a pre-marketing email saying, hey, this is where we're going to be, come and demo our new thing, or come and buy a copy because it's available now, or hey, just come say hey. Social media is definitely going to be the big flexor for pre-marketing. As far as game design, Twitter seems to be sort of the stronghouse for game design. If you are not on Twitter as a game designer, you should probably look into it. I don't use Twitter very much, but when I need to be telling people things, or if I need to be more involved in the design community abroad, Twitter is my friend. I got random playtesters for my game through Twitter, and then one of them met me at Geekway and came right up and was like, "Are you Ben?" "Yeah." "Who's asking?" "Oh, I'm Red Ginger Gamer," whatever. She said her Twitter handle, and I'm like, "Oh, you tried out Vegas?" She's like, "Yes. Do you have more things for me to test?" Like she tried one of our games and she got really excited, and now we're connected, and that builds into a relationship that can help the company. So even if you don't have an audience, post it somewhere. Even if it's just to your personal page, let people know you're going. Just have somewhere that you can post pictures and stuff. Booth display and presentation. So you're at the convention and you have presumably a bunch of stuff that you want to show off to people. Just this last weekend, I went to Geekway to the West. It's probably the largest tabletop convention in the Midwest. It's the biggest one I've ever been to, and if anybody is on my Facebook feed and saw the picture of the hall that I posted, that was just one of the gaming halls. And it was the St. Charles Convention Center. The entire exhibition hall was just table, and it was full of people. There was no parking, and they have like 3 parking lots, and there was nowhere to park. It was insane the number of people that were at this convention. I drove myself mad because I set up the way I wanted to set up, and then I started looking at other people's booths and displays, and then decided on Saturday morning that I was going to change up my entire display because I wanted to be like the big boys. And it turned out that for the first 2 hours that we were open, we did so dismally with trying to present our stuff that we changed it back. And then we started picking up, and we started getting demo requests, and we started making money. But in those first 2 hours, when the first flood of people came in, they just looked at us like we were nuts. And so just because a display works for another company doesn't mean it works for you. I'll be more specific now. So banners, backdrops, and posters. For our particular setup, whenever we have stuff and we're presenting games, it depends on the size booth that we have. Generally, I try to buy 2 booths because I have that much stuff. But at this con, because it was $500 for one 10 by 10 booth, I was not going to purchase 2 booths, and I'm so glad I didn't. So I had 1 booth and an 8-foot table and another 8-foot table behind it, and that's how they set it up standard. So the first thing we did was we set up a tall wire grid rack on the back table so that we could put all the high price items up behind us where people can see it right at eye level. And then on the front of the table, we put all the small things that don't cost very much that people can pick up, look at, and then if they want to buy it, they can take it right away. And then we had some small presentations of the games that we were trying to sell and demo. We had 1 banner behind us, which is horribly out of date, and I still didn't get a new one printed. But a banner is the easiest way to show people who you are. They're not very expensive. A 2-foot by 6-foot banner will run you about $35 on buildasign.com. It's the website that I use the most because they do a lot of coupons and free shipping and stuff like that, and it's a vinyl printed color banner. If you have a graphic artist, or if you are a graphic artist, the files are really easy to set up. And if you're not a graphic artist, but you at least have your logo, they have an online design system that's really easy to use. So a banner, very easy to come by. It's the easiest way to show off your stuff. Backdrops. I think that the backdrops is what scared me from all the other booths, because they had these big, like 10 by 10 size backdrop graphics on these big metal poles. It was all really professional, and it made me really nervous because all I had was a little 2x6 banner on my booth. Now, it turned out that it didn't really matter. I still made money, and I still had demos, and I still had a successful con without having a giant backdrop. Also to note, the people who have the giant backdrops are not designers, they are publishers. They publish lots of games, and they just buy the designs from designers to publish those games that fit their criteria. So if you go to a con and you see somebody that has the big professional setup, it's probably because they're a big company with big money that they can just sort of throw around. There's nothing wrong with being the little guy. Posters are super easy to come by. I got my posters for my games printed out at Staples. Like an 11 by 17 poster was about $10 or $15 or something like that. And I got 2 of them printed. I mounted them on foam board myself so I could stand them up. And those 2 posters show off what the games are. Big companies, they have retractable banners that are like 8 feet tall and 2 feet wide. And they put a big old game graphic on it, so that as people were walking around, they see this big graphic about the game, and I've got a poster like this. But both are valid. But the point of this is you need some sort of advertisement. You need to tell people what it is you're selling and who you are through these graphics. Flyers, business cards, and other giveaways are great things to have at a table. Regardless of the things that I've tried to do to digitize my presence at a convention, people will always ask, well, do you have a card? May I take a card? Do you have like more information? And they want to take something into their hands and put it in their pocket. Now, 90% of the things that you give out are not going to lead to any sales whatsoever. But if you make your printed materials properly, when they find it again, they might actually look you up and try to find out more. So business cards, Staples has an online system. You can pick them up same day, and it's like, what is it, $15 for 500 of them. There's no reason why you can't get your hands on business cards that are just one-sided. I like one-sided business cards so people can write stuff on the back of them. Blah, blah, blah. Other giveaways, that just depends on your budget and what you want to do. I've seen Twitch streamers that give away little rubber bracelets with their Twitch name on them, so that people will wear them and then always, remember to, oh yeah, I remember that Twitch person, let me look them up now and follow them. That just depends on what you want to do. But giveaway stuff, you can go through companies like Custom Ink, Discount Mugs, and there's a couple other ones. They'll print your logo on anything, basically. I'm sure we've all seen those catalogs, and they're pretty cheap too. As far as how to set up things, I kind of said how I do it, but if you have a front table and a back table or backdrop, and you just have a very limited space, this is pretty much how you want to do it. The front table should be things that you're giving away, so things that people can pick up and take with them so that they remember who you are. Easily accessible demos. So the tables that do the best exposure part of their business has a demo ready to go on part of the table. So that people can walk by and go, ooh, what's this? Show me more. And then you can run them through a demo. For video gamers, that means having the monitor and the controller right there so they can pick it up and play it. For tabletop, that means you need to have an amount of space big enough for a demonstration that you can do in 5 minutes or less. Sellables. Anything that you want to sell should go on that front table, and I'll get into sellables a little bit more specifically here in a minute, so I don't want to branch off too much. The back table or backdrop is the larger display to show off what you're about. It should be eye-catching, make yourself stand out. When you look at other designers and other people that have their backdrops, it's cool to get inspiration, but don't let them dictate how you should present yourself, because we are in a current flood of game designers. They're all over the place, and because game publishing has become so accessible, everybody can publish a game, which means everybody is competing for the same eyes and ears that you are. Everyone that's there, while we want to be friendly, we want to make connections, so we want to be a good community, they are also competing with everyone that walks by and trying to compete for their attention. So a good kind of a offshoot of this that I'll talk about real quick. I have a steampunk game that I've been working on, and I've been doing a lot of design with it. I've shared the design in Discord. That's all been wiped off the table after this weekend. I'm completely changing the entire graphical design of the entire game because it started to look like every other game that was out there. My graphic design was being inspired by games that were already there, and what that meant was now I started to look like every other game. I wasn't being different enough. And so I had to go back and look at it and go, what catches people's eyes? What makes them stop and go, I want that, as opposed to anything else? And for me, I feel like, this is an opinion, by the way, that when you see something different in an aisle of things that are all the same, you stop at the one thing that's different. My $50 splurge last weekend was on one game and its expansion because it had a design that I had never seen before. Everybody there had, vectorized, very modern looking illustrative graphics, and then there was one game that had more of a traditional painted look. I was obviously digital paint, but it was steampunk, western, like apocalyptic. Just, it looked insane, and it was on a plain white box with one illustration on the front. And it caught my eye because it looked different from every other graphic design out there. So the more you can make yourself stand out, more successful you can be. And that's just from my opinion, because I am a very picky shopper, and so I don't spend money at conventions very often. I go to a lot of them. So when I see something different and I throw my money down, I feel like that says something about the product that I'm looking at. Sellables, demos, and emails. So getting into more detail about how this stuff works and how you should be doing it. So sellables, demos, and emails. That's the whole reason you're there, is to do these three things. Now, sellables, obviously not required, but if you want to get a return on your investment for being there, being able to sell something definitely helps. Unless you have a large audience that follows you already, I wouldn't recommend making merchandise that has your logo on it and try to sell it. I have friends that have tried to do this, and it just doesn't sell because people don't know who they are. You know, oh, buy this t-shirt with my logo on it that says my game. Well, I don't know that game. I'm not a fan. You know, they're not going to buy something that they're not a fan of. So sell things related to what you're doing, but not specific to what you're doing. I am fortunate that I am an artisan maker, so I can make leather wristbands and leather key fobs that all are just have random gaming things on them. And I've created designs to sell that are related to what I do, but they are not what I do. My number one seller is anything that has D&D on it, and not their trademark IP. Just if it says Druid or Bard or Barbarian on the thing, whatever font or design I decide to make on it, somebody's gonna buy it. Or I make notebooks that say DM Notebook of Doom, and they laugh and then they buy it. You know, it's related to tabletop gaming, but it's not specific to the game I'm trying to sell. I don't sell Thief's Hoard key fobs. I sell a key fob that has D&D stuff on it because that makes me money. And then Thief's Hoard is just an added bonus because it's there and people can see it, and that's the exposure. So if you can afford to just go for the exposure, then do that. In my situation, I can't do that. I have to make my money back. Demos, making demos easily accessible. We talked about that already and kind of how to set those up. But the second thing, which is probably the most important thing, and I practice this with David every convention we go to because it's this important. Practice your elevator pitch. I assume everybody knows what an elevator pitch is. So if you can tell somebody about your game in about 30 seconds or less and keep their interest enough that they want to know more, that is a successful elevator pitch. The elevator pitch can change from convention to convention. I will not tell somebody the same thing about my game if I'm at Wizard World PopCon as I would if I'm at Geekway to the West. At Geekway to the West, I had to be much more technical with my elevator pitch because they already know the gaming terms and they just want to know what your game is in their language. But at Wizard PopCon, I have to put it in terms that anybody would understand and make it sound like it's fun. Gamers, they know that it's probably going to be fun, but they want to know what it is. People at a PopCon, they want to know it's fun before they buy it. It also helps that Thief's Hoard tagline was outbid, outthieve, or outbid, outsmart, outthieve. And they're like, thieving? Ooh, that sounds interesting. And then they look at the back of it and they're like, oh yeah, this backstabbing? Yes, this is my kind of game. I want to backstab my friends, and then they buy it. Sometimes they convince themselves without you having to ever make a pitch. Gaming conventions, I have to pitch to almost every person. PopCons, half the time I'm not even pitching to them. They just pick up the game. Ooh, this sounds fun. Yes, I'll buy this, please. So, yes, make it fun. If you're making a pitch to somebody and they're asking you about your game and they want more information, make sure you make it sound like it's fun or that you care about it and you're not just somebody that's trying to make a buck or trying to hawk them something that is hot garbage. You want them to believe that what you're giving them is a quality product. So you can bring up anecdotes. This is after your pitch. After your pitch, if they want to know more information, bring up an anecdote about one of your play tests or times that you've played it. I've had people ask me, you've probably played this hundreds of times. Do you ever get tired of it? The proper answer is no. I have fun at this game every time I play it. Now that actually happens to be true, but even if it's not quite true, if you tell them, no, I got tired of it after 5 plays, they're not going to buy it from you. Because people will like the idea of infinite replayability, but we all know that that's not how it works. You know, you play a game for a while and it gets put away for a while, and sometimes it comes back out of the closet, and sometimes it goes to the garage sale. You know, just depending on how you feel about it. But when you're making your pitch, you should make it sound as fun as possible. Emails. in all caps, capture emails, capture every email you possibly can. If you're even mildly talking to someone, you should be trying to capture their email. Now, obviously not aggressively, but MailChimp is a great tool. Como Game Dev use it. I use it. You can get up to 2,000 subscribers for free, which means you don't pay for it. I've been doing this for 5 years and I'm still not at 2,000 people, which some designers would say is not very successful, but screw them. But I try to capture email every chance I get, and I try to capture quality emails. So it's when someone is genuinely interested in what I'm doing, then I will ask for their email. And MailChimp makes an app that can go on a tablet or a phone or something, brings up the app, and it's just a sign-up form so that they can sign up on there. And even if you don't have internet or Wi-Fi, it stores that email address, and then when you restore your internet, it syncs it to your account. So you don't even have to have internet to make it work. Email lists are the most powerful form of marketing for your game. It is the best way to give special creative content to your followers and make them feel like you're giving them some sort of value. If you give them value in your emails, they will read them and they will open them every single time. Email opens are much more powerful than any social sharing you could possibly get. Scheduled events versus ad hoc. So a lot of gaming cons will give you the opportunity to schedule your game somewhere on during one of the days, and they all do it differently. Sometimes some of them will let you pick your time slot. Others will ask you to pick a range of time slots, and then they pick for you. Most of them are pretty easy to get under your belt. Ad hoc meaning that just at every opportunity you try to do a demo. At Gateway Geek Fest, they had an area that were considered vendor demo tables, and because I'd never been to the con before, I decided that that's what we were going to do. We're going to fill our booth with as much stuff as we can, and if somebody wants a demo, we run out to the hallway and we demo it. And then I got all messed up because there's all these big booths from these big companies, and they set up demo tables in their booths. And Saturday morning, I tried to rearrange my tables and put a little demo table in my booth, and then nobody came into my booth. Nobody wanted to come in and actually shop the items. So, and nobody stopped to ask what the game was. So then we went back to the original way, and as soon as we just had a front table, people would come up, look at the game, and go, "What's this?" But if I had a demo table out, nothing. So that's just my personal experience. You might have success with that. Oops. Here we go. So you're on the official schedule. That means that attendees might see you and they might be interested. At several conventions, I will schedule a game, and just by the description alone, people will sign up. There have been times where I get no signups. So you do, it's a little bit riskier because you're spending your time away from your booth to go and discover that there's either nobody going to show up to your game, which can be very discouraging for a designer, or you might get a random group of people that is definitely not your audience, which I've had happen a lot. I try to describe my games as accurately as possible, and I will still get people that sit down, have signed up, sit down, play it, and by the end of the game go, "No, I don't really like it. This isn't for me." And that's a really hard thing to hear for designers. So be ready for that kind of feedback if you do scheduled games, because you're getting just random people that are like, "Oh, hey, this one's only an hour. I'll do a filler. I'll sign up for this one to see what it's about." And then they sit down and discover it's not the thing that they like. So be ready for that. However, you can also have amazing demos through scheduled events. You can have people become your permanent fans that come to your event every time you hold one at that convention. We go to GameCon in Iowa, and there's like a group of 3 people that come to our scheduled event every single time. They backed us on Kickstarter at one of the higher levels. They always talk about how great our games are to other people. They became our fans because we did scheduled events, and they played with us once and then discovered that they really like our designs. So scheduled events can get you in the door with some attendees that are out there to become your fans. Ad hoc, you get more demos and playtests with this option. This is just, "Hey, what's this about? Oh, would you like to see a demo? We can step right over here and do a demo." And that gets you an opportunity to get the cards out, show them or video game, whatever it is, and get things out and show them what it's all about. Now, ad hoc is going to be more of the video game presenters. Scheduled games is more strictly tabletop. That's not going to happen so much with video games unless you are presenting your game at the con as part of a panel or some other presentation, which Pixel Pop did do one year, and I got 15 minutes to explain my board game to a crowd of people, and that was an insane time. Because all they had was setups for video games with giant display screens, and I had to sit on the edge of the stage with pieces and board and go, this is what it is, can you see it? But it is harder to get people to stop at your booth and try it out. We are constantly being bombarded with advertisements and people that are trying to get us to stop and listen to their pitch. So that makes it all the harder for us as designers to go, hey, you might be interested in this. It's, I'm guilty of it too. I will go around the room, the vendor room, just to stretch my legs, and every booth I walk by, hey man, how's it going? Hey, it's going pretty good. Hey, you want to see this? Like they use hello as an in, and then they just jump right into, hey, come try this game. And I might seem extroverted, but there are times when I don't want to talk to people. I just want to shop because I just want the peace of looking at the game myself, sort of, taking it in. And then if I want to know more from a person, I'll ask a person. There are lots of people like that, like me, out there, but there's also people that will stop and go, yeah, sure, give me your pitch. So, you have to have a thick enough skin that you can take a lot, as many rejections as you do get people stopping and wanting to know more. Ad hoc is definitely more viable if you have less space, or if you have a space that's separate from your booth that is sort of like open to gamers, where you can go, oh, you just step right over here and I'll show it to you. It'll only take 5 minutes. For some reason, the word 5 minutes works pretty well. Most people think they have about 5 minutes. So if you say, oh, it'll only take 5 minutes. Here, come just look at this. It takes like 5 minutes, and I can show you the whole game. If you could show them an entire game in 5 minutes and show them what it's all about, sometimes they'll sit down and go, no, let's play all the way through this. I want to see how this goes. Other times they're like, oh yeah, okay, thank you. Every demo that I did at Gateway led to a sale. Every time I was actually able to convince somebody to go sit down, play the game, by the time they got up, they were like, yeah, I want to buy the game. Oh, awesome, what do you want to buy? The deluxe kit. Like they're all in. If you can get them through an entire game, a lot of times they're all in and they will buy into it. I printed more copies of our first publication, Materia, right before Geekway, and a guy came up and asked us if we would demo for 3 kids that were under 10 years old, and I said, of course, I would love to do that. And it was rough getting through the instruction phase, but I was convincing the parent that it was worth his time to look at this game because it was good for ages about 10 and up. And they got through the game, and he's like, oh yeah, we're gonna buy this. I'm gonna buy 2 copies. Cool, man, that's awesome. And I'm gonna buy your other game because this game was good. So just because I showed him one game, he didn't even know anything about Thief's Sword, and he bought that one just because I demoed the other game for him. So sometimes your presentation, your personality, how you come across to people can sell them on you as a designer more than your game itself. And if I can say, it's my opinion that you should be selling yourself as a designer more than your game. Your game concept will sell to some degree. But if you sell yourself as a designer to people and they want to follow you as a designer, they will buy every game that you make. And that's where you can find some success as an independent designer. Now, if you want to make designs and sell them to publishers, that's a whole different ballpark. I unfortunately don't have any experience in that, but that is a viable form of making money as well. Yeah, what's up?
I want to say my feeling is it's probably the opposite for video game designers. Is they're far more interested in your game than your studio, right? Like if you're there and you have a limited budget for banners, you might want to think about a banner that showcases your game and not your studio, because they're there to see what the game's about. They could probably care less about who your studio is.
That's fair.
I've seen it both ways, honestly, because some studios are like, the studio is that game and the game is that studio, and then there are others that we're a studio that makes a whole bunch of small wacky things. Follow us to see what we come up with in the next 3 months.
Yeah. For some companies, they want their one game to be their linchpin, the one thing that's holding it all together, and that's viable. As a tabletop designer, I do have the luxury of being able to tout myself as, hey, I'm a game designer. Oh, you designed this? Tell me more. And they, in the tabletop world, if they like one game, they're going to think that they're going to like your next game. In the video game world, I don't know if that translates exactly. But I think that you could try that. I think that you could try, if you have multiple concepts, showing people your progression, talking about, and I don't know if this is where the difference lies, but for tabletop designers, we talk a lot about our process and about how we got it to where it is, and people care about that in tabletop. In video game design, trying to talk to people about this little piece of code you came up with that's so clean and neat might not be as interesting. No offense, code is awesome because it makes things work, but I talk to people about, oh, well, I toiled and toiled over picking the perfect mechanic to make Thief's Hoard really feel like you're stealing, and it's bidding, and this is how it works. And then they go, that's really interesting. So it could just be the way you sell it. It could be on an individual basis. If you can sell yourself as a designer, I'll stand my ground on this. If you can sell yourself as a designer, I think you can be more successful than someone who just sells one game. That's just me. So the biggest part of going to conventions that is worth all of this other headache of just trying to get your name out there, get exposure, make sales, is making connections. Conventions are a highly concentrated area of people that are not only interested in games, but are sometimes game designers. The hidden gem of presenting or just attending conventions is making connections with other designers. Like at Pixel Pop, they have a mixer for the designers, and you can just meet other people that design games and ask them about their games and talk to them about their games. If you're at an event, find time, get away from your booth, stretch your legs, and go play other stuff. Play anybody's game. Video game, tabletop, doesn't matter. If there are multiple options for you, play everything. If you're a video game designer, go play some tabletop. If you're a tabletop designer, go play some video games. And just see what people are doing, see what they're up to. Ask them about who they are, and ask them where they're from and why they came upon the design that they did. Creating that sense of community not only cements you stronger within the community, but also gives you better insight. And those connections you can use to your advantage in so many different ways. Not just making connections with these people doesn't just give you sort of a boost the signal for whenever you want to launch something, but they are also the best form of feedback you can ever possibly ask for. A designer will tell you exactly what's wrong with your game, and though some of them have opinions that you could throw out the window, some of it is also incredibly valuable, and more valuable than some random person that says, well, I didn't like it. Well, why didn't you like it? I don't know, I just don't like it. That gives you nothing. Whereas a designer says, well, I think the mechanic just feels kind of clunky. It feels like it's going slow. And then you can take that feedback and really evaluate whether you think it's going slow, or is it just perceived as going slow. Oh, well, that was only a 20-minute demo. That's not slow for a game, but why does it feel slow to the person? And that kind of feedback can help you improve your game so much more. Through these people, you can also find out what groups they're a part of. Are they part of larger design groups that you don't know about yet, and become part of that larger community? Is there like a Twitter hashtag that you should be using that you're not currently? Or are there Facebook groups that you should be in that you aren't in currently? Like as far as board game development stuff, I'm not just in Como Game Dev and St. Louis Board Game Dev or St. Louis Board Game Designers, but I'm also in Tabletop Game Kickstarter Advice, Tabletop Artist Guild something or other, Board Game Revolution, and like 2 other ones. Just because I want to see what people are talking about, I want to see what their opinions are on things, and I want to know what designers are coming up with. And if they're like, hey, I have this playtestable file, does anybody want to help with this? I'd be like, hey, yo, I will download that and I will tell you exactly what I think of it. I have no problem being honest. So after the convention, or during and then after the convention is great for connecting with those people and finding your way into the larger community. That's about it. That is everything I know, or at least that I could think of for conventions. Are there any questions just in general about any aspect of going to a convention.
How often do you scout a convention before you go to it to try and display? Do you do more than one trip? Do you just research it?
So if I'm looking at a convention that I haven't been to before, I will start by asking other designers that have went and ask them about their time there. I will send an email to the vendor or game presenter coordinator person, ask them what their attendance is like, ask them what kind of setup works really well. Do they have anything that would help an independent designer like at Geekway? I failed to ask this question that I should have asked, but the question to ask was, hey, can I donate to your play and win? Apparently their play and win is their most popular event of the entire convention, and they allow independent designers to just throw their game in there as a giveaway, and thousands of people will play it, and only one person wins the one copy that you got. So everybody that didn't win the copy might run back into the vendor room and pick it up from you if they enjoyed playing it. I had no idea about that resource until the weekend was almost over, and the vendor lady was like, oh, you should have done this. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me that? You didn't ask. Well, that's fair. But other people that had been to the con already knew all that. So now when I go back for my second year, you better believe I'm going to give them copies for their play and wins now that I know that that's their biggest event. And then as far as like scouting cons, I follow, what is that? I think it's called fancons.org. And it's just sort of an aggregate site that pulls together all different kinds of conventions. But I could list just about every gaming convention off the top of my head for you in the area if you wanted the list. Other questions?
Do you ever see yourself like potentially trying to go farther away for the novelty of being that guy from Missouri?
It's crossed my mind. Geekway was a stepping stone for me and David to get to Gen Con, which is Indianapolis. It's a little bit farther away. PAX Unplugged is another like, stepping stone up. Getting farther away means spending more money.
Yes.
I am incredibly frugal, and I rarely book a hotel. I know because I've made connections over the last 5 years with people in conventions. I have a lot of couches I can crash, and a lot of guest rooms I can crash, and that is incredibly helpful. I have a friend that I stay with in St. Louis. Every time I need to go to St. Louis, I have a friend in Kansas City. Every time I need to go to Kansas City. Every time I need to go to Omaha, Nebraska, I have somebody there. Wichita, Kansas, I have people there. Topeka, Kansas, I have people there. So getting yourself involved in the broader community can also save you a lot of freaking money, because the first year I did this, I looked at how much I spent on hotels and I about puked. It was an insane number because I went to like 30 conventions and 30 weekends of hotels, and it was a good about, what would that be, like $5,000, just in being able to stay places. And now I don't have to spend that $5,000 because I make relationships with people. Other questions? In Iowa, I am that guy from Missouri, by the way.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I have this small select number of fans in Iowa, and that's the guys from Missouri. Awesome. What are you working on now? Did you guys do any more Game Jam games? I have a guy in Iowa that wants my Game Jam games so bad, and I don't want to print it like it is. I just can't. So in a nutshell, yes, go to conventions. If you can present there and you have the money to do it, definitely do it. Hire a graphic designer if you are not one yourself, and make some cool looking stuff to stand out from the crowd and get yourself noticed, and get your game out there and let people play it. That's it.
All right.